Why, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Innovantage Podcast, where business meets tech to bring you your competitive edge. As always, I am your host, Max, and it is my ongoing job and duty to explore that edge between business and tech. And today's exploration takes us into a very interesting place, a place where those two things ideally coalesce. We will be talking about business transformation, and we are going to be talking about IoT, which is the Internet of Things. We are going to be talking about things that are both real and ethereal, and all of them are connected by tech. To help me on that journey today is Adriana Grüschow, who is Industry Lead Business Development Manager at Zühlke Group. Adriana, hi, welcome to the show.
Hi, Max. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you on here. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What does a lead business development manager for industry even do at Zühlke Group? I know that you've had a very interesting and very rich journey from engineering into business development. So you are basically a representation of what this podcast strives to be, to find that edge between the two. So how did that happen?
Yes. So it's really funny, if you had told me 10 years ago that I would be working now in business development, I wouldn't have really believed you. I started out with quite technical studies after school. So I'm from Guatemala originally. Then I went to Germany to study industrial engineering and then power systems engineering in the master's. And afterwards, during my early roles, I wanted to explore different areas from project engineering, risk management, quality control, in the production, etc. And sales, ironically, was really last on my list. I don't know if you know, but like many engineers, I had a preconception about sales that it isn't technical enough or strategic enough. But yeah, I learned how wrong I was. And three things changed my mind here. One of them is that in every role I had, as I said in production and so on, I noticed that the moments I enjoyed the most were the ones where I could speak directly to clients to really understand their challenges and translate them into solutions. So I realized, I wanted to I didn't want to stay behind the scenes. I wanted to be in the front end of the business where the real impact happens. Let's call it like that. And during my time at ABB, I also had a mentor who was and still is a sales manager in engineering, sales engineer. And he showed me that sales in an industrial or a tech setting is very different. It's not about pushing products. It's about more listening, advising, and building trust with the customers. And the third thing that happened is I was drawn more and more towards digitalization and innovation because I noticed these are the areas where transformation happens fastest. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this podcast here, right?
True.
That led me to different roles. After studying in Germany, I moved to Switzerland. While I was working here, I also had an assignment in Japan, in Tokyo, where I lived for 6 months. And finally, when I came back to Switzerland, I had a role as a product manager for SaaS and IoT solutions at ABB. It was for motors and drives. So basically, let's call it smartwatches for machines. And now, since 3 years, I am in business development, as you mentioned, at Zühlke. And at Zühlke, we are an innovation partner where we co-create basically very complex innovation projects with our clients. And in my case, the clients are in the industrial sector, so in the manufacturing sector. And the projects that we do are often really at the intersection between AI and hardware. And I realized business development in a consulting setting is even more nuanced because you're not selling a fixed product, right? And Zühlke, we don't have a product. So we are crafting like really customized, bespoke solutions for the client. And that requires not only technical fluency, but also a deep understanding of people. So it's this intersection that you were talking about before, and that interests me the most as well, which is why I recently pursued. And last year I finished a Bachelor of Science in Psychology as well, because the human psyche is fascinating to me.
Wow, even psychology. Now that's something I was not expecting, like I thought that the transition from industrial engineering into sales is hard enough, but then you add psychology on top of that. I mean, I understand how useful it is, of course,
It
but
is,
to
yeah.
manage all of it, quite a challenge. Quite a challenge. So, can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about those challenges then? I'm guessing you faced a lot of them. You mentioned one that, from an engineering standpoint, sales does not look that enticing or interesting or, quantifiable, right? And I agree. This is something that I
Hmm.
see a lot of the time because in my realm, we also do very similar things in terms of business processes. We are a software development company that does custom software solutions. So, again, no
Hmm.
real product to speak of, but we come in, we create something out of nothing, and a lot of our founders in our industry and some of the founders in our company are also engineers, just software engineers. And when
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
faced with the reality of sales, they always look at it like, oh yeah, but it's not quantifiable, it's not a system, it does not correlate to something that you can just sit down, write down, create a system, and just launch it. But then
Yeah.
when they start working on it, they kind of
Hmm.
see where human interactions and systems kind of coalesce, and that's basically the
Hmm.
business. So yeah, sorry for the ramble, but it
No, yeah.
does it does ring very, very true and very close to home. So what kind of challenges have you faced in that transition that you can talk about?
Yeah. I can underline everything you said, right? That engineers have this preconception about sales, also that it's not really technical. And I feel like everyone is talks about different languages. So to this journey, the challenges that I have and what I've learned basically is how important it is to be a translator. You be a translator between business and tech on the one hand, then between hardware and software, and between different priorities as well. Because while engineers may have the priority of wanting technical robustness, business leaders want a clear return of investment. And bridging those mindsets is a skill that's become invaluable during that time. And it's challenging, as you were saying, it's not easy, especially in traditional manufacturing and in the area where I'm working, where there's often resistance to new things like subscription models, cloud platforms, servitization, and everything we're going to talk about here.
Mhm.
But luckily, I have seen some progress over the past 6 years. I have seen some mindset shift, and I think real progress is happening there, like opening up to these new technologies as well.
Okay. Okay. So then at the end of the day, how does technology really contribute to the success, of bridging hardware and software,
Mhm.
of the human and the inhuman? Where does it realistically play a role in your opinion?
So between the human and not human, right? So innovation is not just about adopting a new tech, like the non-human part that you're saying. It's
Yeah.
aligning culture, people, and the business models, of course, around a new or fresh value. And this is where I try to bring this cross interdisciplinary experience to the table to help these hardware companies unlock the potential of AI, for example, in a way that's grounded in human needs, but also rooted in strategy. So, speaking the hardware's language, navigating the complexities of AI and software, and as I was saying before, translating between teams and stakeholders.
So how do you then actually do it? Those types of translations, I'm guessing, they take a while to actually develop the skill to do those kinds of translations. That it's not just about, standing in the middle and just saying one thing and then saying the other thing. It's more so
Mhm.
about finding a particular niche, understanding the business needs, understanding the technical limitations, understanding how to bridge the gap between the two. So, like, could you give
And
me maybe some
listening.
specific examples of how you approach it, or
Mhm.
what works, what doesn't?
Yeah. So a big part of that is really listening to the people talk, and really listening to what are their priorities or their challenges that they're facing, and then focusing on that and trying to find common places, a common ground between the priorities from the one very technical person, let's say, and the priorities of the business person, and trying to highlight how this new technology will create value for both sides. Um, and yes, you have to be patient. In the beginning, it can take a while, but once you start showing value with small steps, then you start creating like credibility
Mm.
and more confidence of the people that seeing that it works, and seeing some advancement there.
Okay. Okay. So in the end of the day, it's all about alignment when it comes to understanding and expectations, I'm guessing, right? Where you have to,
Yeah.
yeah.
So maybe one example from far away, but I was when I was in the turbochargers department of ABB at that time. Now it's not a part of ABB anymore. Um, I was supposed to integrate into the production one new way to inspect quality issues in the casting parts of the turbochargers. And up until then, this process was done manually, like visually. The quality manager used to go there maybe once a day in the afternoon, then check and see by side, recognize if the pieces are fine or not, or if they need to be soldered or anything afterwards. And he did it just by side or even by using a ruler sometimes. And there I evaluated different solutions like visual inspection camera with computer vision to do this inspection automatically. And at the beginning, it was really hard to get these quality managers, but also the production managers working there on board. Um, and I think that it's not good to push it at the beginning, and this resistance is normal. But then after they were seeing how much time they would save by this new technology, they started gaining credibility. So that's how you, with small steps, show them that it works. And it might take some time to build
Mhm.
this credibility and take some patience on your side, but you'll get there. Yeah.
Okay. This is a very interesting example. So, little by little in the end, step by step, showcasing real value, both in terms of business and in terms of tech. But you have
Hmm.
mentioned AI, and, you know, nowadays there are many opinions on
Hmm.
what AI even is, and especially how much value it brings to a business, any business. And some believe it to be revolutionary, where whole areas of our world are going to be disrupted, people will be out of jobs, and we will not even imagine how much change there's going to be. And there are, of
Hmm.
course, people on the other side of the spectrum that tell, like, look, it's a very, very complicated, but basically an autocomplete text tool where it can only generate some stuff which is sometimes right, sometimes wrong, and takes about as much time to refine and as much time as it would have been taken to actually write something yourself. So out of those
Hmm.
two sides of the spectrum, and we have the hype bubble, whether or not it's a bubble, of course, is also a very debatable topic, but hype is there. What is your opinion on this whole AI hype thing? Does it apply the logic that you've described of showing incremental change and incremental results? Does it apply to AI, or with hype, does everything break down?
I would say the truth is somewhere in the middle between these two extremes that you were mentioning. So you are absolutely right. There is a big buzz right now around these emerging technologies. You mentioned AI, but also a few years ago it was blockchain and the metaverse. Nowadays it's really more Gen AI.
Yeah.
And I do think that these technologies are very exciting and they are full of potential. But there is a risk that the businesses start adapting them just because they feel like they have to. They feel like it's a trend, or like everyone else is doing it. Because you start hearing about it everywhere. You go to a conference or take a look at LinkedIn, and then you feel like, oh my God, they're super advanced. Everyone is doing so much with AI and we're not, and they feel pressured. But first of all, LinkedIn is not the reality. In the conferences, also, it's the most like the niche projects that are shown there. And at the end, innovation is not about chasing these trends and these hypes. It's about solving these real problems that really matter. So the first thing I always say normally is that you should start with the problem and not with the technology. And that applies to AI specifically, because it's easy to get caught up in the hype. I mean, also ourselves, I think everyone, when ChatGPT came out, we also got caught up there, and we're trying it. It's exciting, it's new. Everyone's talking about it. But that mindset can, in the business context, can lead to wasted resources and missed opportunities, because technology, no matter how advanced, is not the solution in itself, but only a tool, right? And what really matters is how we use this tool to help solve a real need in the real world for your users and for the business. So when you're doing such a project, we always ask, what problem are we solving? Is it a real meaningful need, or are we just reacting to this hype? Will people actually use it? And most important of it all, in the business context, is, will users pay for it? Because otherwise you start bringing cool new features that no one really wants or needs, or just another app. I don't know about you, but people, and I myself even, get annoyed by the fact that you have to download now an app for everything.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, so we do have to stay grounded and ask ourselves these questions. This is what I call the innovation filter, in which we have three aspects. So the first one is desirability. Do users really want this? And this is the most important, as I was saying. The second one is the viability. Does it make business sense? I mean, does it have a valid business case? And the third would be the feasibility, and that is, can we build it and can we scale it with the resources that we have? Normally, the bottleneck is not in the feasibility part, technology-wise. Nowadays, a lot of things are possible, but the most important questions are the first two. And yes, if you skip those questions and go straight into building something, it can be a shortcut to failure. And that's why before starting any AI project, we normally take a step back and start with a strong discovery phase. That's why we call it discovery phase. And there we really take time to talk to the users, validate our assumptions, and make sure that everything aligns with the business strategy. So at the end, we want to deliver value with that. Yeah.
That's an interesting point because, again, my experience very much relates to that, where you have to ask yourself whether an innovation is needed because it drives business, or is it driven by business, or is it just innovation for the sake of innovation, where it's fear of missing out, as you've said,
Exactly.
right? Where everybody's doing something, I need to do something with it as well, regardless of whether or not you actually need to do it. So the discovery phase does help. I agree with you here, definitely. But what I also see is that a lot of customers choose to forgo discovery phases and just kind of, hit the ground running, where you're like, okay, we don't have the time for discovery phases. We don't have time to think.
Yeah.
We don't have time to analyze. We need to do something with AI right here and right now because is that something that you see as well, or is it just, my experience?
we see it every time. I would say in almost every project, right? Because they come with these ideas, and they do know their market and everything, and they just want someone helping with the implementation. And we always sort of really question everything, like all their assumptions, and suggest to take this step back and start with a discovery phase. And I would have to think, but I would say almost never has someone said, "Yeah, that sounds great. Let's spend more budget in just doing this research and checking our assumptions again." At the beginning, they're very resistant to the idea, but we really make pressure on doing this before. Otherwise, we run the risk of building something cool that doesn't deliver value. So we say that we should let the problem guide the solution and not the other way around, you
Mm.
know.
So then, what would your advice to companies like this be? Companies that want to innovate, but are resistant towards doing it the right way, the long way, the boring way, where they basically don't want any
Mhm.
discovery phases. They want, AI to change their business here and now. What would you say to those kinds of companies?
I would say take the time to focus on what actually works and will actually deliver value, because at the end of the day, as you said, innovation is not to do innovation just for the sake of it, and it's not about being flashy and using the latest tech. It's about being effective. And even though these technologies can inspire us, they should not drive the decisions. So if the decision that you're making is just because AI is nowadays super trendy, that's not the real or a valid case, because this AI will help to solve a real validated problem. But otherwise, if it doesn't, you just think it's a cool feature, but no one uses it, then it's probably just noise.
True.
So yeah, I would say to those companies, being open, mostly be open to question your own assumptions, to question all the assumptions that you took until there, and try to prove them wrong, like any scientist would do. Yeah, and for this you need mostly openness.
Mm. That's a very an obvious thing. I think that
Hmm.
when people hear this, they would think, I don't know, do a competition analysis where you look at what the competition did and didn't do and learn from their mistakes, or, follow the
Hmm.
business leaders, companies that are bigger than you, more successful than you, and what they do. But that lacks humanity, I feel, and what you're describing is basically a much more human approach, a much more kind of weighted approach, where you take the situation in, where you kind of bring yourself into the situation, where you take that into account and your business and
Hmm.
the context of innovation, generally speaking, in the particular area where you want to innovate, and you find a balance, which sounds pretty nice in my opinion. It sounds like a much better approach than old by the numbers, like ChatGPT just tell me what my competition does and I will do the same without thinking. That's kind of
Exactly, and it doesn't translate. You cannot just copy paste what another company is doing, no matter how similar the company is to yours, because there's different business context everywhere. So you said, if you said the example, a bigger company is doing something and then you're a smaller one, I think you have to be there as well. Maybe you don't. Maybe you have different kind of clients, and it's another niche. So it's really good to validate every assumption and every value for your context, and only your context, not the one from your competitors.
true. True. I agree with you here. So then, talking about transformation as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you've
Mm-hmm.
been involved in helping companies transition from product-based companies to service-based companies, and a lot of business transformation is inherently a part of that process. And generally speaking, innovation and business transformation come hand in hand because one drives the other a lot of the time. So, what are some of the challenges when you do make those transitions from product-based to service-based or subscription-based models?
Mm-hmm. So this transition is really very underestimated, I think, sometimes, and it can be one of the most influential that a company can go through. Moving from this product-based business to a service business, right?
Yeah.
And at first glance, it might seem like a small thing, like it's just a tweak in the revenue model. But in reality, it's a full reinvention in how this company operates, thinks, measures value, and delivers this value. So, in many ways, it's like basically two worlds colliding. In one world, you're shifting from this world built on ownership and one-time transactions, and on the other hand, you're transferring to one with based on usership, on data, and on continuous relationship with the customers. So this is not just a sales change; it touches everything, like product development, legal, IT, the culture of the whole company. And you ask the biggest challenge here. The biggest challenge here we see is this mindset shift. So many companies treat this as it would be just a tech upgrade, like maybe adding some software, automating billing, but this kind of transition from product to service requires rethinking your entire business logic, because you're no longer just selling a product and then walking away. Now you're in an ongoing relationship with the customer, and your success depends on whether this customer keeps seeing the value month after month.
Hmm.
So you have this big hurdle there with the
And
mindset. Exactly.
basically, what you're describing again is the process of change management and how to realistically do it, from what I understand, of course. So
Yes. Yeah.
then, can we talk a little bit about that? Like, what's the role of change management in an organization's life cycle? How do you approach it? How do you tackle it? How do you maximize the efficiency of change management, generally speaking?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. What I was saying with the mindset shift is has to do everything with change management. And change management is not just, let's say, part of the solution when it comes to doing this transition. It is the work you have to do there. So people in the company need to understand not just what is changing, but also why. Why is it changing and why it matters? Why it matters to the business, to the customers, and to them personally, of course, very important. And that takes more than just some memos or strategy decks on PowerPoint. It takes leadership, it takes patience, and it takes a culture that allows for experimentation and learning. Because if you skip this change management, you will feel this resistance at every level, from the sales team to finance, operations, and maybe even from your own leadership group, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that this is irrational. On the contrary, this resistance is not. It's very human, it's very natural to resist change at the beginning. Um, and once your people are used to selling, delivering, and measuring success in a very different way, it's hard. So part of this change management is helping them see the new value that they're creating and giving them the tools and the confidence to deliver it. So yeah, it's as I was saying, change management is not just a side task, it is the work that you have to do there. And to manage this, it's what I've seen is that it's good to create even a completely different division, focusing only on that, focusing on servitization or digitalization.
Hmm.
I don't
That's
know
a
if you've
very
seen this
interesting.
as well. Yeah.
That's a very interesting point you bring up, because I've also seen a lot of business transformations go through in both businesses large and small. And a lot of the times, the answer to that resistance is to try and create smaller things within a larger whole, where, we make a small step towards that transformation and we see how it works in an isolated environment. If we are a service-based
Mm-hmm.
business where we take subscriptions, how about we create a small MVP for a small product with a niche audience and see whether or not that product will work? Or the other way around, where we've been a
Mm-hmm.
product business, but sometimes our clients ask us for a service of, maintaining something additional to that product or integrating with a system that we see a lot. And we're like, we're not ready to open up a whole division, but maybe we can offer it as a separate subservice, and we can kind of try and make a small MVP out of that business idea. Is that like a
Mm-hmm.
feasible approach, or maybe it's not enough? Will you achieve your goals with those kinds of small steps, or no, in your experience?
I think starting small is a good idea, but um, I think one of the common mistakes that companies make is trying to have the same teams that normally sell products now sell services, and that if you start, let's say, a small with a small MVP, as you were mentioning, and just have the same people trying to sell a new and different thing now, this is where it can fail, right? This almost never works in my experience, because selling a product, as I was saying, is about features and specifications, and this transaction that is just once. And while selling a service, you are providing ongoing value with firmware upgrades, with every update that you give them, and you are thinking in terms of lifetime engagement. So what I have seen companies do differently that are successful there is to create a separate dedicated service unit, business unit.
Hmm.
So they have these teams that can move fast, they can test their ideas, and they can learn without being held back by the rest of the company with legacy systems that are measured differently. So this gives them basically space to build the right capabilities and to test these small MVPs that you were saying. So small, um, this part is right, but with a different team, I would say, because you require different KPIs and different sales motivation, different sales motions, and it's a different mindset completely.
I agree. I agree completely that it's a very different type of psychology and a different type of people, and separating the two is a very good idea.
Mm-hmm.
That relates to what I've seen work as well. And coming back to what
Mm-hmm.
you've said in the very, very beginning, where,
Mm-hmm.
how an engineer looks at sales, and how you for
Mm-hmm.
yourself found out that sales are pretty systemic when it comes to consultancy and long form sales. And
Mm-hmm.
at the same venue, the difference between like B2C and B2B sales is very different. And consulting sales and, like just fast inbound sales, where product led
Mm-hmm.
sales, for example, or sales led sales, for the lack of a better
Mm-hmm.
word, are very different things with very different mindsets and very different psychologies required to succeed in those. So, for example, me myself, I also prefer long form consultative sales. But give me
Mm-hmm.
like, a phone and tell me to make 100 deals a day, and I will probably just die somewhere around deal number five. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so, like, is there any secret that you need to maintain in order to cultivate those kinds of different mindsets, or is it mostly like hiring from the outside the people that you need when you need them? Can you find a balance between where you want to be and what you have right now?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think it's pretty easy, or it should be that hard to identify those people in your current sales team that can adapt their mind shift to selling services. And these people, you should move to this new service division that I was talking about, and not hire the complete team entirely new. It's also good to have some continuity, right, of the people that really know the products and the services. But at the end, I think you really have to accept that these are two different worlds, and with the whole team that you already have, you cannot just take them and give them the goal of now selling services. So I would say a mix of both is good. I think you definitely need to hire fresh people from the outside, or co-innovate with an innovation partner, right? And that doesn't mean that you have to do it only like that. You can also keep your part of your team that can do this transition, because the companies at the end that succeed in this shift are the ones that accept that these are two different worlds, as I was saying, and the ones that basically build the bridge between these two worlds. So they keep them separately, but you build a bridge instead of forcing like one to fit the other or to replace the other.
Yeah, good to know. Good to know that there is a path forward that does not rely exclusively on, cutting out the old, replacing it with the new, and forgetting about everything that was. And
No, yeah. You have to keep also your product business, your legacy business. Yeah.
indeed, in the business schools and in workshops that I've attended, there's a lot of focus when it comes to business cases of things that don't work. Famous cases of for example, Kodak, where they were basically inventing digital photography
Yes.
and then did nothing with it and went bankrupt. So that is a very interesting case, true. But I feel that the more successful and the more kind of interesting in the boring way cases are where a company tried something but kept that something until a better time came, and then they reevaluated what they had and then they doubled down on what they already had. So not putting all of your eggs in one basket and saying this is going to be the next big thing, we need to do only this, but rather just trying, experimenting, and keeping the data, the history for a better time.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's good to hear that you agree, because I feel that's the whole IoT, the Internet of Things, have also had their hype cycle.
Yes.
It's hard to remember
A
when
few
was the
years
peak
ago,
of that. Probably maybe
yeah.
2018-ish, around that time.
Yeah,
maybe.
that sounds about right. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
around the time also I was working on a lot with IoT and this sensors.
Yeah. So that was basically the talk of the town. It was not as big and not as huge as AI is right now, but it was also a different time, and the kind of the disruption that was happening was aimed less at consumers and more at industries, in my opinion. So you've basically lived through that, right? The hype came and went, and IoT is still there. But as far as I understand, there is a change in what is IoT and what isn't IoT, and into smart connected systems, basically. So from your perspective, how does that look like right now? What that shift is? What is the place of the Internet of Things right now? Has it died, basically, because the hype has ended, or is it alive and well and people just stopped talking about it as much?
I would say it's alive and well. It was just replaced by, people don't talk about it as much now with the whole AI coming. But the narrative changed a bit, maybe. So at least at Zühlke, we don't talk about IoT. We talk about smart connected solutions, as you were mentioning. Because for a long time, IoT was just about connecting these devices and collecting the data. We were talking about sensors, platforms, and cloud connectivity. But now the conversation has matured a bit. So it's not about just connecting things for the sake of it. It's about why we're connecting them and what insights and value are we gaining from it. So a few years ago, you can imagine you have a maybe connected vacuum cleaner at home, and that just meant that you could control it from your phone. But now with AI, it maps your rooms, then it learns from your habits and adapts to your schedule. So it's not just a connected product anymore, it's more of a smart service. And the same thing with the, let's say, this household appliance is happening also in the industry. So connected machines, be it motors, compressors, pumps, whatever, are not just about preventing breakdowns, they're about predicting the performance, and based on that, learning from it, optimizing their energy usage, and extending the lifespan. So I would say IoT is still very, it's a still very actual topic, but it's no longer seen as the end goal. It's rather seen as an enabler behind the services that create the outcomes that users really care about. So, and today the market maybe is a bit more cautious at the moment than 2018 with trying out this many of these things, because many of these initiatives ended at the proof of concept phase, of the POC phase. So nowadays, if you're starting such an initiative or wanting to continue it, now they are more ROI driven, I would say. So the people really want to know what's the return and how soon will we see
Mhm.
value, and is the solution also scalable? All right. And as I see, how soon do you see value? We have also to accept that in innovation, be it IoT, AI, whatever, you cannot use the same KPIs, because this value that you see sometimes needs a bit longer. So you need to have a bit more patience. I don't know if
Yeah.
you see it this way as well.
The- I'm kind of trying to go over it in my head, trying to digest it a little bit, but it does sound like a more mature approach to a technological trend that has had its AI, sorry, not AI, had its hype cycle come and go. Basically,
Mm-hmm.
where, initially, and I remember this as well, where a lot of solutions came down to IoT just because, what kind of
Mm-hmm.
sensors we can add to whatever warehouses that we already have. Like, what can we do with this proprietary piece of tech that we have lying around? What can we build on top of it? What can we connect stuff to? And it was driven a lot of the time not by business need or realistic innovation, but by hype, because,
Mm-hmm.
hey, IoT is hypey, let's do something with that. And now what you're describing is a much more boring process where, okay, what's the return on investment of this initiative? How much time is it going to take? Do we understand that implementing such a solution into this business process will only net us incremental betterments rather than revolutionizing the whole business process overall? And I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that's great in the end of the day. As somebody who runs a business, I am a bit
Mm-hmm.
tired of this whole disruptions on top of disruptions on top of disruptions, both internal and external. Like,
Mm-hmm.
let's do something calm and predictable for once that can be measured and can be understood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, again, I'm ranting. I'm sorry about that. But
No,
do you
but
feel that
you're
maybe
absolutely right.
Do
Yes.
you feel that maybe AI will come to that place sometime soonish, where we can easily just, calculate the ROI on implementing an AI solution into a business process, and it will be just a bit more boring than it is now?
Boring is a funny word. I mean, I hope so. I hope it comes to this, because yes, maybe it is boring, and it's not like, okay, let's try something and experiment with it and see what comes out of it. It is way more grounded, I would say, more grounded in reality, because when I say I hope it comes to this with AI, is because the problem with what you were mentioning before with the IoT projects is that they just ended at this POC phase.
Mm.
So people got excited about it, built a POC, and then just companies ended up with basically a graveyard of many POCs that never scaled. And this is what we called PoCititis, like a sickness. It's a joke, but it's basically it. And it happens because the the technical feasibility is no longer the bottleneck. Nowadays, these sensors and cloud platforms and connectivity, everything is widely available. So the real challenge is what I was mentioning at the beginning, which is business viability and desirability for the user. So how relevant is it to the users? Will they pay for it, and so on? So this is why, in the case of IoT, a few years ago, or some years ago already, we started using the term proof of concept at Zühlke, and we started calling it proof of value, because we concentrated more on the value that it brings than on the technical feasibility. And I would be happy if this more boring or more grounded approach also happens with AI, because then you would save a lot of resources, not only implementing these projects but also sustainability, right? Because with AI, I think it's common knowledge that that it has an impact on sustainability as well. So with AI and with IoT, with both, I would say that scalability needs to be backed from the beginning, so from day one, so that you don't end up with this graveyard of AI and IoT POCs at the end of the day. So, but that you really have scalable solutions that you can say, okay, yeah, we're using it, and it's not just small pilot that we tried out 5 years ago and nothing really happened afterwards, or it rolled out in one country, or in two countries, but not in the 30 countries that we are present in,
Mhm.
and yeah, so
I like the term PoCititis, right? That's how you said it.
yes.
POCitis. Uh,
Mhm.
that's definitely something that I see a lot in AI, especially right now. Like over like how long has it been? It's been 2 years, I think, with the AI I have now. So like
Mhm.
the graveyard of AI proof of concepts is so big now that yeah,
Yeah.
I hope that people can kind of take that as a basement now, step on it, and go towards the boring stuff of actually calculating ROIs and stop hyping stuff up all of the time.
Mhm.
But that's definitely
Yes.
I also will try to remember that term. I definitely need to use it more. That's a great one.
Yeah, it sticks, and I think it happens when you just concentrate on the hype and not on the what it should bring. And maybe also one thing that it's easy to remember is that at the end the solution um, needs to benefit one of the three P's. So either people, so that would be like, does it improve lives, patient lives, for example, if it's in healthcare. Does it improve profit? This is less altruistic, but it's important, of course, for businesses. I mean, in terms of, does it reduce downtime, improve efficiency, create new revenue streams? And the third P is planet. So does it help lower emissions, reduce waste, save energy, and at the end support these sustainability goals? And of course, it's unrealistic to meet all three, but at least one, to at least focus on one, and is good.
I'm happy that the last one is related to sustainability because I was afraid that you
Mhm.
would say like buy a personal yacht for the CEO of the company that does the implementation. So at least we're thinking
No,
about the
yeah.
environment systemically. I like it.
Yes, yes. Here at Zug, it's super important. We really try to integrate this aspect into every project that we do. Definitely.
That is good to hear. That is good to hear. I feel that in Europe that comes out much more often than it does outside of Europe. a lot of it is due to
Definitely,
regulation,
yeah.
of course. And speaking about regulation, talking about like general kind of data, a lot of concerns that currently arise are that corporations know too much about us, and IoT plays a huge role in that. There are sensors all over. We are seen, we are heard, we are known about, and of course, there's obscene amounts of data that are being collected systemically about all things, and that raises huge privacy concerns. But in Europe, at least, there is regulation combating it, starting with GDPR, for example, which was a very kind of monumentous step in that direction. So, what do you feel like? Is that a net positive or a net negative? How does that impact the industry that you're in or the industries that you work with?
I think it is positive, because in the example of, you were talking about data and regulations, and in the example of the EU Data Act, and its implications, for me, I think it's very positive. But of course, I understand if for some companies it poses some risks and they are afraid, because basically this EU Data Act, it's a major shift that reshapes the rules of who controls the data and who benefits from the data. So traditionally, when you bought a connected product, be it an Apple Watch or a connected machine, the manufacturer kept exclusive access to this data, to the data that it generated. So basically, it's like this data was locked inside their ecosystem, and it made it hard for users like you and me to tap into its value and to share this data if you want to. So this Data Act flips that model, and it gives users, be it as a person and individual users or companies, it gives them the legal right, because of this regulation, to access the data their devices produce, and, as I was saying, even share it with others if they want. And the reason why I said it's positive for me is because it fosters more competition, more innovation, and more user empowerment. On the other side, I really understand the manufacturers. For them, it's a wake-up call, because the balance of power around data ownership is shifting from central control toward openness. And this means that companies need to rethink how they create value, not just by owning the data, but by enabling new services around it. And one of the issues that these manufacturers face have to do with intellectual property, right, with the IP.
Mm.
So this is a big concern, but it doesn't have to give like everything away. It's more about enabling fair access to the data and creating a level playing field, while still, of course, keeping safeguarding the IP. But yeah, in general, I would say these regulations are a positive thing, because they're not just a legal change, not just something you have to comply to. It's more like a strategic opportunity, and it opens up new business models. It also gives opportunity to new third service providers to deliver new kinds of services from aggregated data. So imagine that you have like a fleet of machines from 5 different brands, 5 different manufacturers, and you don't want 5 different apps and portals, right? Ideally, you want one that integrates everything. And if you get the data, and you're able to share it with a third service company provider, then they can aggregate the data and give you more actionable insights, which I think will even spark even more competence, and more innovation. So now the manufacturers are forced to design products from the scratch, with data access by design. It's what they're called, meaning they're built up from the ground up to give users the data in a secure manner and in a machine readable manner, they call it, which is like you just cannot give the raw data in a way that users don't understand or can do anything with it. You need to give them to them in a way that's understandable for them as well. So yeah, I think huge opportunities are opening up from these kinds of regulations. Exciting.
That's interesting to hear because I think that a lot of business people, specifically business people, when they hear regulations, only thing that they hear is limitations, where regulation
Yeah.
can only limit business growth. And some purists would argue that an ideal market is a free market where no regulation exists and just
Mhm.
businesses compete with businesses. I've said numerous times on this show and outside of the show as well that I am more so a fan of regulations when they are done correctly and especially when they're communicated correctly. So I agree
Mhm.
with you that business opportunities are created through that, but at the same time, you know, it does create limitations for the business, which in the end of the day I feel is a net positive. Maybe not a good thing all of the time, but a net positive.
Yeah,
And
yeah. We
to
will see. I mean,
yeah.
yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, I was just going to ask probably what you're already starting to talk about, like what we will see, what kind of time we will need to actually see what impacts regulations will have on us. And Europe, generally speaking, is more regulated than any of the other
Mm.
innovators in the world. So time will tell, I guess, right? What do you think?
I think so too. I think it will take some time. Like even though this these new laws or the Cyber Resilience Act as well, the CRA, they're being like implemented soon. They have these grace periods. I think it will take some years to see what really comes out of it. But in essence, when you travel to different places and you see what's going on there in terms of data protection and so on, you're kind of grateful that in Europe we have this regulations, and the CRA I think is also very important. The Cyber Resilience Act, because it's pushing manufacturers also to go beyond the launch readiness and commit to security on the long term. So, including like vulnerability reporting, keeping devices secure across the entire life cycle, or also when doing upgrades and updates right on the software and everything, they have to ensure that it's secure, and that and I think they also even have to report if there's been any security breach. They also have to report it in like 24 hours and make it available for everyone and so on. So I think it raises the bar for them as well, which is not a bad thing.
No, hard to disagree. Hard to disagree. I'm going to be honest with you. So then, to try and summarize our discussion, what would your advice be to business leaders or maybe tech leaders that are currently trying to find the balance between business needs and real innovation with regulations creating opportunities for them ideally? How would act in this situation?
Mhm. Um, I would say what I have seen is that the only constant that I've seen is change. I don't know how about you, but this is the only thing I've seen. Whether we are talking about AI, IoT, cloud, metaverse, I don't know, but something that is cutting edge today in terms of technology can really become a legacy tomorrow. It goes so fast and it goes even faster with time. So, my advice is to accept this change and make learning your day job, right? Embrace this fail fast experiments and I iterate relentlessly. So that means maybe blocking time each week to try a new tool, watch a new demo, or read a new article. Um, Also, question yourself: what assumptions am I ready to challenge? What I was mentioning before about being open and ready to challenge your own assumptions. Um, Failing fast has to do a lot with accepting like a setback as a lesson and not a defeat. So being okay with it and iterate, launch minimum version of your ideas with and validate them very quickly with your real data and real users to refine your approach. So I think for the leaders that keep their curiosity alive and let adaptability be their superpower, they are well equipped for the future.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. Thank you very much, Adriana. And the very last question. Is there anything that I should have asked, but I didn't ask? Is there a question that you want to answer to without me asking?
Yes, I think what I like is like real examples because we talked a lot about the theoretical part, but maybe I can tell you about some of the really example projects that we have done with industry customers, like real world examples with AI and what has come out of it. This is, I think, more tangible. Would it be okay?
Sure. Please do.
um, so yeah, for example, one is for Burkhardt Compression. As the name says, they do compressors, and in the area of sales, they have to respond to customer requests by creating quotes, right? Like many other companies. And to do so, their sales engineers have to search manually for these technical specifications to prepare the quotations. And you can imagine how many technical specifications they have, um, hundreds of documents. So what we did there with them was to create Gen AI powered chatbot. You could call it like a knowledge assistant that allows users to chat with these specification documents and retrieve validated requirements instantly and not losing time with it. This is like the so-called RAG use case, retrieval augmented generation, which we're seeing a lot lately in sales, in service, and not only with industrial customers, but also um, insurance, banking, everything. But yeah, so that would be one example. Another example that is exciting is for Bosch in Germany. In automotive, they have the problem that of identifying spare parts. For Bosch, you can imagine the catalog that they have for spare parts is over 13,000 items, and it was super time consuming identifying them. And the solution there was to use computer vision. So you could take your camera and use it for image recognition using neural networks to instantly identify these parts. So it works like this: you would take a photo, then it would be validated by the algorithm if it's usable or not. Then it gets compared to the catalog and sees if there's a match. Then it predicts the right spare part, and then it acts like accordingly. By acting, I mean it can order automatically a spare part. So it's yeah, it increases this by a lot. Um, I have so many examples. Sorry, I'm so excited about real world examples. Um,
So then
Maybe you
maybe
can tell me what interests you. Mhm.
yeah, can you tell me maybe where people can find you and read more about your examples or talk to you directly about those examples? Because I'm guessing that some of them might be interested in what you have to tell them.
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I think that's the easiest. LinkedIn is the easiest. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you very much. Thank you for the real world examples as well. I understand the urge to keep bringing them up, but I do encourage everybody listening to reach out to Adriana and ask for yourselves because I'm guessing that she has a lot of particular experience to what you know. So thank you. Thank you, Adriana. Thank you for joining us. And thank you all for listening to us and looking at us. If you're looking at us on YouTube, of course. If you liked what we have done so far, tell us about it in the comments. If you don't like it, you can tell it about us in the comments. And do subscribe, like, and share our videos and recordings across the platforms that we publish them on. And thank you very much for your time. I really do appreciate it. See you next time. Bye-bye.